Welcome to On the Town with the Vegas Voice. I'm John Lindquist, your announcer. You can find out more about me at johntheannouncer.com. How easy is that? johntheannouncer.com. We've got an exciting show for you today. We're here at the beautiful Humana Henderson facility, 1000 North Green Valley Parkway. This place is a beehive of activity. Cooking classes, exercise classes, dance classes, TV shows. They're doing it all right here, and it's super easy to get to. Humana Henderson facility. We've got a great show for you. Two of the greatest impersonators on the face of the earth, and they're both named Rich. What are the odds of that? We'll have that, the host, and his very special guest coming up right after these brief messages.
Quality of life. It's important to all of us who live here in Las Vegas. But for those of us who are over 65, that quality of life can sometimes be hampered by the presence of heart problems, blood sugar issues, or breathing difficulties. If you're Medicare eligible and have been recently diagnosed with diabetes, chronic heart failure, cardiovascular disease, or a chronic lung disorder, Humana may have a health plan for you. Find out how a Humana Gold Plus plan could provide you with all the benefits of a Medicare Advantage plan, plus additional resources for your specific health needs, including our growing network of physicians that are committed to delivering the highest quality of care to all of our members, and convenient locations near you, which feature the latest in healthcare technology and a patient-centered comprehensive care model designed to help manage our members' health. Call to speak to a licensed Humana sales agent or visit a Humana Guidance Center today to learn about our plans or stop by one of our clinics.
Welcome everybody, Rich Natoli here with another Rich, the famous, undisputed heavyweight champion of impersonations, Mr. Rich Little, ladies and gentlemen,
Rich
right there.
Little.
John, you've got a very interesting voice. I love the way you announce.
We call him the golden voice of radio.
I've been done by Rich Little. I can die now.
I've been done by Rich Little. I can die now.
You see how impressionists just sit there and listen to the voices?
Yeah.
So now you, as a kid, and we've talked about this before, you just were fascinated with the voices of the school teachers, right?
Yeah.
Is that how?
Yeah, I was. I was bored in school, and I wasn't that good a student, but I used to watch my teachers, and at first I did their walks, and how they entered the classroom, how they opened a book, and it was all physical, and then the voice came later.
Yeah.
And I would get up before the teacher arrived in the morning and do the teacher, and the kids loved it, and then we had a lookout at the door. And they'd say, here he comes, here he comes. I'd take my seat, we'd all behave. Then the teacher would walk in, do exactly what I'd just done, and got big laughs. And could never figure out why he was so funny.
Why he was getting the laughs. And so it's interesting you talked about the walks, because I remember when I was working in a show with Wayne Newton, and he told me a story about when he was on Bonanza. And he said they took a break because it was a lunch break. And on the set next to Bonanza was another Western with Walter Brennan and John Wayne, and I think it was Robert Mitchum or somebody.
Rio Bravo, probably.
Was that what it was? Was it Robert Mitchum in that? The other actor besides
Robert
Walter
Mitchum.
Brennan and
no, that wasn't
and John Wayne?
Yeah, it was. I think it was, yeah.
Because he said when the catering truck came and they broke for lunch, he said he looked over and they were all walking away towards the catering truck. And he said, I could tell you who every one of these actors was by the way they walked.
Rio Bravo. Ricky Nelson was in it too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
See, man's an encyclopedia of famous movies. So now you worked at a movie theater as a kid in Ottawa, Canada, right?
Yeah.
And so tell me, but what was that like?
I was the worst usher. I was always watching the movie. People were stumbling over themselves.
You were watching the movie?
I was looking at the movie, and I was the worst. Finally got rid of me, but that's where I started doing impressions. I saw the movie Marty. Do you remember Marty?
Yeah, with Ernest Borgnine, sure.
I saw that movie because I was an usher about 200 times.
Yeah.
And then when I met Ernie Borgnine for the first time, I did all the dialogue from the movie. And he said, Gee, I don't even remember that. You know?
Wow, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
how old were you then when you were working at the theater there?
I was probably, well, I was going to school. It was a part-time job.
15 or-
I was 16, 17 years old.
Yeah. And so now then, okay, so you started doing impressions by watching these celebrities. What movies do you remember were playing there? Jimmy Stewart
well,
movies?
Marty I saw a lot, and a picture called Interrupted Melody with Glenn Ford and Eleanor Parker. I saw that half a dozen times. And as a matter of fact, I saw that movie so many times, Interrupted Melody, that I actually noticed the microphone was in the picture like 12 times.
Is that right?
Yeah, and you wouldn't see that the first time you saw the
That's
movie.
a blooper.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies where you see Mike shadows.
Yeah.
And Mike's in the shot, you know, and it's funny because it wasn't that great a film, but I saw a lot of movies many, many times because I just stare at the movie. Matter of fact, I'd sit down with my flashlight, and people would just be falling over themselves, wondering where the usher. They didn't know where the usher was.
The usher studying the voices in the movie.
And I got fired, actually. So.
You did?
Oh,
How
yeah.
long did you work there for? Like a year or two?
A couple of days. No, I think I worked there for probably a couple of weeks.
And the guy, and the guy who fired Rich Little from studying voices in the movie, I wonder what he said years later.
Well, one time I got thrown out of a movie theater. I was taping a movie called The Far Country with Jimmy Stewart. And in those days, yeah, you know, a little portable recorder, reel to reel, and I had to plug it in, no battery. So I plugged it in under the screen, and then I left the microphone there, and I was taping the movie. And I taped the whole movie. I get up and change the reel. And then when the movie was over, I was rewinding it, and I had the volume up, and all of a sudden you heard... People thought there were rats. And the manager came running down, and the ushers, and they discovered it was me and my tape recorder going at 100 miles an hour. And they picked me up, and they threw me out on the sidewalk and threw my tape recorder after me. And it bounced on the road.
So now when you...
And then I told Jimmy about this years later.
What did he say?
He said, Rich, you should have contacted me. I would have given you a print of the movie. You know, and I said, well, Jim, I didn't know you then, you know. But he thought that was quite funny.
What was next? So you knew all these stars because you're in such a golden era of show business. So you did everything. You did the Dean Martin roast. You did every TV variety show,
A lot of
even the Judy Garland show, which
Yeah, that was the first show I did.
And what were you, like 20 years old when you did that show?
Yeah, I was in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that much about Judy Garland. I'd seen her in, her famous movie, Wizard of Oz.
Right.
But I didn't know that there was a lot of conflicts going on with her, and you know, trying to get her out of the dressing room, and the drinking, and the delays and everything. And I didn't know all this was going on. So actually, we didn't finish taping the show until 3 in the morning.
Wow, wow.
And then also, there were technical problems, but mostly it was Judy and just getting her to get out and come on the set. You know, was a big problem.
Yeah.
You know.
And I want to
Peter
mention...
Lawford was on the show too, and he was a train wreck too.
He was?
Yeah.
A lot of train wrecks in show business,
Well,
folks.
I can remember he did a number called "There's a Man Around the House," a simple song, and they shot it 23 times,
Yeah.
and he kept fluffing it over
Really?
and over and over and over.
And you're
then,
thinking,
you know,
what?
With Peter Lawford and Judy Garland, the show didn't end till 3 in the morning,
Wow.
and I was
wow.
just standing around going, believing it was technical problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've done all these shows, Hollywood Squares with Paul Lynde.
Oh yeah, Paul Lynde. You know, Paul hated my impression. Oh God. Every time I would do Paul Lynde, he would look right at the camera and go,
Who's he doing? Who's that? Oh, that's disgusting. Get a day job. That's pathetic.
Did he not know he sounded that way?
Well, he just didn't like my impression. Maybe I exaggerated him too much and, made him a little too gay. I don't know, but he.
I think that sounded just like him.
He just hated it. I thought he was going to strangle me a couple of times.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, he was another one, kind of a train wreck, right? With
Oh,
the-
he was a train wreck too. Yeah, yeah. He was a drinker. I mean, I can remember him on Hollywood Squares after the dinner break. We'd do 3 shows, dinner break, then 2 more shows. After the dinner break, Paul was wasted. They had to strap him into his square.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So what do you remember? What were some of the funniest things that he came back with? Do you know some of those?
Well, I mean, there were so many. And Paul, can you get an elephant drunk? Oh, sure, but you'll never get it up to your apartment. I mean, he was quick with his answers,
Yeah, and they didn't know those, right? The questions weren't pre-organized, right? I mean, it was pretty much
Well,
impromptu.
the answers were written for him.
Oh, they were written.
Oh, yeah, they were written for everybody.
Ah,
They wouldn't write answers for me, but they would tell me who the celebrity was.
okay.
You know.
So you could kind of get in your head what
So
you thought. Yeah.
If I didn't know the answer or couldn't think up anything funny, at least I had the impression going for me.
Right.
They'd say a question about Gary Cooper, or a question about Jackie Gleason,
Yeah.
about Jack Benny. So I knew I had to do them when they asked me the question.
Yeah.
But Paul, he would ad lib, but
Yeah.
mostly they were written.
But I remember seeing you a few times in the center square seat, right?
Yeah, I did the Center Square a couple
Yeah.
of times.
Well, where was Paul Lind at the time? He was just drunk somewhere.
Probably stoned in the corner somewhere. Paul didn't like doing Hollywood Squares.
He didn't?
No, he hated it.
Really?
He wanted to be a leading actor.
Get out!
Yeah,
Really?
He wanted to have his own television show, and he didn't want to be a second banana. He wanted to
Really?
be a-
But he was known for Hollywood Squares.
Of course.
Yeah.
and that's why he stayed so long. But he hated
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah. So now, out of all the game shows you've done, would that be your favorite one? Was Hollywood Squares your favorite?
Yeah, that's the one I did the most. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Did you
I
do
never
like
did the
match- you never did
I
match
never
game?
the match game. I thought I might embarrass myself. I don't know.
Oh, you didn't. Oh,
I'm not
so
that clever.
yeah,
You gotta be
Yeah.
pretty smart to do that show.
yeah. No, I think you could have been great on there.
Or Jeopardy. I would never do
Oh
that
no,
show.
Jeopardy, no. Did you
Wow.
ever see Celebrity Jeopardy? You can see how dumb a lot of these celebrities really
Celebrity
are.
Jeopardy I wouldn't be too bad at, but boy, I've watched Jeopardy. If I can get one question right, I'm doing well.
Well, they could have done that, and you could have just answered in different voices the whole time. Never been yourself.
Yeah, I could have done that. Yeah. Well, I just never got around to that.
We're talking to the world's greatest impressionist, the granddad,
Not
the father.
Not the world's
See,
greatest. People in Borneo don't know who I am.
well, it's time they learned. This is Mr. Rich Little, who's playing at the Laugh Factory Room.
Yes.
Tell us about your show there.
Yeah.
That's at it's time. The show time is what?
7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. And you're there what night? What
I'm
days?
off Mondays and Fridays, and
Okay.
I'll be on tonight, 7 o'clock. And I do an hour show, and it's really about me. It's kind of a history of my career in sort of an hour, and I show a lot of film clips. I'll do John Wayne, then I'll show me with John Wayne. I'll do George Burns, I show me with George Burns.
It's a great show. I've seen
And
it
then
a few
lot
times.
of my art, too. I show a lot of my sketches because I'm an artist.
Yes, and we're going to talk about your book and your art and all that stuff. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be more back with Rich Little right after this.
You don't know this yet, but in 1,500 miles, you'll see what you're really made of. After 5 hours of spinning and one unfortunate ride on the Gravitron, your grandkids spot a 6-foot banana that you need to win. In that moment, you'll be happy you partnered with the Humana Care Manager and got your health back on track, because that banana isn't coming home with you until that bell sings. Great things are ahead of you when your health is ready for them. At Humana, we can help you with a personalized plan for your health for years to come. Some relationships you stick with. Over time, they get even better. That's why more people stick with Humana Medicare Advantage. We work together with you to find the best plan, however your needs might change. Because great things are ahead of you when your health is ready for them. Humana Medicare Advantage, the plan people stick with.
Hello, we are back talking to the legendary Rich Little, who plays at the Laugh Factory at the Tropicana in the upstairs room there at 7 p.m. nightly and dark. What days again? Dark
Mondays
on,
and Fridays.
Dark on Mondays and Fridays. Go see it. It's a great show. I've seen it a few times. It's a terrific show. You know, you do everybody in that show. You do.
I do about 50 impressions.
Yeah, and you know who I love that you do, and I've mentioned this to you before, but I love the Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon impressions. Can you do a little of those too for us?
Well, Jack Lemmon was always, one time I did the Jack Parr show. He did the Tonight Show years ago, one of the first shows I ever did. And I had Jack Parr sitting on my right, and I had Jack Lemmon on my left. I've got a copy of this, and it's like sitting between two machine guns.
Yeah.
Because Jack Parr said, Rich, I want to ask you about and Jack Lemmon is going, but Rich, you do me, and and it's just hysterical because you can hardly make out what they're saying.
And then Walter Matthau came in. What did he say?
All right, get these two out of here. They're driving me crazy.
I love those voices. I love those voices. Now, there's a story that I want you to tell because when you were on the radio show a while back, you told us this story. When you were doing the Rich Little show, Bing Crosby was on the show.
Yeah.
So, and you were doing him in the sketch.
Right.
So what happened there? Tell us.
Well, we were all imitating Bing, and
Right.
Bing was known for the this is Bing Crosby, and we were. Everybody was talking with those B sounds, that Bing was
What's
famous
for breakfast?
Yeah, that's right. I want some bacon and eggs for breakfast, and some brown beans,
Blueberries.
and some bagels and blueberries. And we were all talking like Bing, and Charlotte Ray played Bing's mother. She talked like that too. I came on doing Bing. I talked like that. Bing came on. As himself, he actually played my father. And then there was an English comic came on, and he just looked at the camera and went, "Say, chaps, what's happening?" And there were no B's, and everybody went, "Throw the bum out. He's no good."
And so,
well, anyway,
so he came to your dressing room, Bing Crosby, right?
Bing came to my dressing room before we taped the show, and he said, "Rich, I'm having a little trouble with that sketch. It's not working out for me." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, I'm having trouble with that B thing. I don't know how to do that, and you guys are so great doing it, and I just can't do it." I said, "Bing, we're doing you." "Well, I can't do me." "Could you show me how to do that thing?" And so I had to sit down with Bing and go over the lines with him.
Yeah.
And tell him how to do them.
You said, "You want me to show you how to do you?"
Yeah. I said, I don't understand that thing. Well, actually, on the show, if you watch it, he's brilliant.
Yeah. I remember how great that was. Now, can people get copies of that now if they wanted to see the
Oh, sure.
YouTube,
I
or
think
where?
they can.
Is it
You can
YouTube?
get copies almost of anything now, you know, if you look it up.
Because those were great shows. And you did you do the show for what, 2 seasons or?
I did my show for 1 season. I think.
One should have went way longer than that because it was a
Well,
great
I
show.
had my sheepdog on the show, Dudley, every
I
week.
remember, yeah.
He got more fan mail than I did. And he thought he was going to get a spinoff, but he didn't. And the show folded, and Dudley retired, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. And that was, what network was that on?
That was on ABC.
ABC. So now
Wait a minute. Was it? Or NBC? NBC.
NBC. Yeah. And so now you had a lot. What kind of guest stars? You had a lot of guest stars that were celebrities on
great
there. Like,
guest stars.
who was on?
Oh my gosh, we had. I'm trying to think. We had Starsky and Hutch were on.
they
They
were
were
on.
popular back then. We had on. Michael Landon was on. Bing was on.
Yeah.
Bob Hope was on. Bill Cosby was on the show.
Bill Cosby was on.
And behaving himself.
Yeah.
We had a lot of great guests on that show.
Yeah.
Tom Bosley, Betty White was on the show.
She's still doing shows, Betty White.
Betty White,
Wow.
great.
Now, when you do your impressions for the person, and when we talked about Paul Lynde, we talked about doing the teachers and all that. George Burns, you used to do George Burns for George Burns all the time, right?
Well, George, you know what that Richie said, you know, I think you do me better than I do. I was just thinking, you do me so good that when I die, I think they should bury you.
Luckily they didn't. But I love George Burns.
Yeah.
George was one of those guys that loved to talk, and sometimes on an airplane or waiting for an airplane in the lounge or anything, he would talk about the old days of show business, and I used to think, gosh, I wish I had this taped. He would talk about Eddie Cantor, about Al Jolson, Sophie Tucker,
Yeah.
and all these
Yeah.
wonderful people.
Just the history
Fanny
that-
Bryce,
Yeah.
all these great stars of years and years ago, and he could recall everything. He was amazing.
Now, did they all do that? Did Jack Benny do that? Did Bob
Jack did
Hope
it.
talk about all that?
Yeah, they like to talk about the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, did you belong to the Friars Club?
Yeah, I did belong to the Friars Club. And
So-
I did a lot of those Friars roasts.
So when you would walk into the Friars Club, it was like a who's who of stars, right? Eating dinner
Oh,
and
yeah,
everything.
Yeah.
And that?
Well, they would all go and play cards. George Burns and Groucho Marx and W.C. Fields and John.
What was that like? Those three. What were those three like playing cards?
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I bet you Groucho cheated. Don't you?
I got an ace over
That's
here.
right. I'll raise you. But that must have been exciting to walk in and see all those people playing
Yeah,
cards.
yeah.
They play cards every day. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so now, when you did the Friars roast, those were different than the Dean Martin roast
Oh, the
because
Friars roasts were blue.
they were just raw. Yeah, you could do whatever,
But
right? Mm-hmm.
you know something? Even though they were blue, I mean, some of them were filthy, but they were funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't mind blue humor as long as it's not too gross. If
Yeah.
it's funny, if
If
it's
it's-
clever,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
But comics today are just using the four-letter words.
Yeah, you don't want the shock,
For effect.
yeah, for
And
shock.
I don't really like that.
Right.
I think it's a cheap way to get laughs. But back, Milton Berle was the king of the Friars roast.
Well, that's because he was doing your
you
act.
could never follow Milton.
He was doing your act, Milton Berle. He did everybody's act, didn't he? I remember I followed him one time at the Comedy Store, and he said, I love the bits that you were doing about yada yada. And I said, well, you'll be doing them in Cleveland next week. And he goes, yes, I will. He said, so yeah.
Pat McCormick, you remember him?
Yeah,
he was
sure.
a great comedian and a great writer. He wrote a joke for me on one of the Friars roasts that I still remember. I don't know whether I can tell it or not. Can I?
Yeah, tell it, sure.
How restricted are we here?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, he said Rich is a little kinky, and he said on weekends Rich will go up to Mount Charleston and take off all his clothes, put salt in his ass, and lie face down in deer crossings.
And what show did he say that on?
On one of the Friars
On one of the
roasts.
Friars roasts.
To me, actually.
Yeah,
But that's hysterical, isn't
that's
it?
hilarious.
See? It's not that blue, but it's funny.
No, that's funny. Now, who did they roast on there? Do you remember some of the people that got roasted on there?
On the Friars?
Yeah.
Oh, well, no women. I
No
think
women.
the only woman that ever did a Friars roast was Phyllis Diller.
Phyllis Diller.
She snuck in one night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she would be
But
funny.
they were all
though.
men, and
Yeah.
because the jokes were pretty raunchy.
It was kind of like a
And
boys'
they were
club.
never never filmed. I have a lot of tapes of them.
Oh, they were never filmed.
They were never filmed, no.
Oh, it was just like a private night that they would
Private
do
thing,
that,
yeah.
and just for the audience. How many people in the audience? Was it a few hundred people? there?
Oh, a couple of hundred people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when the Dean Martin roast came along, they were clean. I mean,
Yeah. And they were funny.
they were funny.
Some of the best material was on those Dean Martin roasts.
Yeah, if you look at those old Dean Martin roasts, there's no blue humor at all.
No.
The interesting thing about Don Rickles was that his mind was so fast. I used to watch Dean on the Dean Martin roast and really study him. And I'd say to myself, how does he do this? Because most people, like Johnny Carson or Dean Martin or, the great comedians, Bob Hope, you say something funny, you have to take a little second or two to think of an answer. Don, boom, right out with the answer. And then while Don was talking, he was thinking of the next answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
His mind was going at 100 miles an hour. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
he was amazing.
And Robin Williams was another one.
Another one like that,
His
right.
mind was going at 100 miles an hour.
Right,
too.
right. I remember seeing Don Rickles one time at the Sahara years and years ago, and he was just, boom, rapid fire.
Well, when Don put me down one night, I thought, I've arrived. I loved it.
What did he say to you?
He said, Rich, one of these days you're going to be out in the garden planting flowers, and the family's going to say, Uncle Rich, want to go for a drive in the country? Country my ass. You're going to the home. And when you get there, Rich, you'll never get out. They're going to tell the people in charge, take care of him. He doesn't know who he is. And if he did, he'd want to be somebody else. Rich, I say to you in all humility and from the bottom of my heart, you're a pain in the ass. Why don't you put your teeth in backwards and bite yourself to death? But that was Don.
Yeah.
He just never stopped.
No, he never stopped. And so now, you did a number of Tonight shows with Johnny
Yeah.
Carson.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
That was great. Great exposure. If you did the Ed Sullivan Show and you went over, everybody the next day knew who you were because everybody watched Ed Sullivan. And the same with Johnny Carson too. Isn't it interesting? Back in those days, people would actually rush home from a restaurant
To watch
Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do that today. would
No,
they?
no.
But so if you did well on the Carson Show or the Sullivan Show, everybody knew who you were. It's amazing.
Yeah. So now when you did, now Johnny was a little odd, right? Like he wouldn't socialize too much off camera,
No, he
right?
never socialized.
Yeah. So the first time you'd see him would be on the set,
Right on the show.
right on the show.
Never see him in his dressing room. Never speak to him after the show. He might wave at you.
Yeah.
Drove his own little car.
Yeah, and I want to mention there's a hilarious clip, and if you go see his live show, which I recommend you do, over at the Tropicana, there's a clip in there where you're on Dinah,
Yeah.
and Carson, and you're doing Carson.
Well, I'm not on Dinah literally. No. but I'm on her show.
You see, when I gave him free reign to say whatever you want, that's what happens. So, okay, so when you're on the Dinah Shore show, and you're doing Carson, and then Carson walks out.
And I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, and he walks right out, and he's there.
And that was all set up.
Yeah.
And when I started to imitate Johnny Carson on the show, and I started to do a joke as Johnny Carson, he walked out.
He walked out.
And Sammy was on the show. He went crazy. when he walked
Yeah.
out.
That's
And
a great
everybody
clip.
was laughing, and Johnny motioned to me to come over. I thought he was going to maybe punch me out. I don't know. But actually, the two of us ended up doing Johnny Carson together.
Right. That was hilarious. Now, Dinah set that up?
Dinah set that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sammy was on. And so now you used to do the Mike Douglas show, right?
Yeah,
and,
out of Philly. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
did you do it when it went to LA then after a while too,
No,
the show?
I did it in Philadelphia, and I did the Merv Griffin show too. That was done in Hollywood.
Yeah.
On Vine Street.
So you would fly
Did a
to
lot of those.
Yeah, you'd fly to Philly just to do the Mike Douglas
Yeah,
show. They would bring you
right.
out. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and that was interesting. And so, was there anybody that you wanted to work with that you didn't get to work with? Any celebrities?
Let me think.
Whether it was on a game show or whether it was on a variety show, someone that you always wanted to work, because you met them all pretty much.
I met a lot of my idols, you know. I'm trying to think of people that I'd love to have. Well, there's a lot of people that I never met that I impersonated.
John Wayne, you met John Wayne though, right?
John Wayne, yeah.
What did he say when you?
He used to say, "Little, I'm losing my walk. Show me how I do it." This is true. This happened one time.
Did he really?
He was shooting something on Laugh-In.
Yeah.
And I was standing in the audience.
Yeah.
He said, "Show me how I do my walk. I'm losing." So I did.
Yeah.
I went right across the set and did my John Wayne walk. And he looked at me very closely. And when I finished, everyone applauded, and John Wayne said, Well, hell, that's how I walk. I've been doing it like Loretta Young for 50 years.
We're talking to Rich Little, impressionist extraordinaire, who is performing at his own show. What's the title of your show?
It's it's called Little by Little.
Little by Little, which is the title of the book.
Title of my book.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this book when we come back. More with Master Impressionist Rich Little right after this.
Quality of life. It's important to all of us who live here in Las Vegas. But for those of us who are over 65, that quality of life can sometimes be hampered by the presence of heart problems, blood sugar issues, or breathing difficulties. If you're Medicare eligible and have been recently diagnosed with diabetes, chronic heart failure, cardiovascular disease, or a chronic lung disorder, Humana may have a health plan for you. Find out how a Humana Gold Plus plan can provide you with all the benefits of a Medicare Advantage plan, plus additional resources for your specific health needs, including our growing network of physicians that are committed to delivering the highest quality of care to all of our members, and convenient locations near you, which feature the latest in healthcare technology and a patient-centered comprehensive care model designed to help manage our members' health. Call to speak to a licensed Humana sales agent or visit a Humana Guidance Center today to learn about our plans or stop by one of our clinics.
Welcome back to On the Town with the Vegas Voice. We're here with the heavyweight champion of impersonators. His name is Rich Little. The book is Little by Little, People I Have Known and Been. It's a fabulous book. The show is titled Little by Little at the Laugh Factory at the Tropicana. I encourage you to go see it. Now let's go back to Rich Natoli talking to Rich Little.
And this book is great because I've read this.
Thank you, John. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Is that not the golden voice of radio?
No.
Is that not the
Well,
golden
no.
voice of radio, ladies and gentlemen? John Lindquist.
Embarrassing.
We're so glad to have John on this show, you know, every time we do it. And the book, this pretty much talks about everybody and everything. Now, Ronald Reagan, did you ever all see when he did the inauguration of Ronald Reagan, he performed at that? Did any of you see that? Many, many years ago, he performed at the inauguration. It was a brilliant performance.
1981.
And you were friends with Ronald Reagan, and
yeah.
he loved his impression of you.
I spent a lot of time with him. He had a wonderful sense of humor. And what's written on the book is interesting because he sent this to me and I put it on the back of the book. It says, I must start working on my Rich Little impression, just in case you ever become president.
And he liked the impressions of him.
Oh, he loved
He
it.
liked it, yeah.
He loved it.
Yeah.
I remember when I didn't imitate him, when he first came on the scene, I was having a tough time getting his voice down. I ran into somebody on his staff at the airport, and they said to me, "Are you doing Reagan?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on it." "Well, start every sentence with, well, well." And I said, "You're right, he does
That's
do
what
that."
he did, yeah.
And that's it. That was the key to doing Reagan. Well, and look down
Right.
like this, go, well, and then look down. So when I first
Yeah.
met him, I said, I do the well, but
Yeah.
I don't understand why you always look down and then raise your head and talk.
What did he say?
He said, well, Rich, you'd look down too if you owned a horse ranch. He was quick.
Yeah.
He was very quick with his answers.
And so you did. Now you've performed for a lot of the presidents, right?
Yes.
You've known, how many presidents did you know? Did you know?
Well, let's see. If you go through them, the first one I did an impression of and Matt was Richard Nixon. Mm-hmm. You know, and then after Nixon, there was.
No, we're not going to let you skip over him. Wait a minute. Back up. Back up. Richard Nixon.
Well, Richard Nixon. I once did Nixon in front of him, very early in my career down in San Clemente, at some garden party he threw.
Yeah.
And I was invited.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I was thrilled.
Right.
And when I got there, my act was there. I'd never met my act before. John Wayne was there, Jimmy Stewart was there, George Burns, Glenn Ford, Glenn Campbell, everybody there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, everybody in those days was conservative, not like today. They were all conservatives. And I did Nixon in front of them.
What'd you do?
Debbie Reynolds dragged me around the swimming pool, threw me at Nixon and said, Mr. President, Rich is going to do you. And Nixon what? And I started to do my Nixon in front of him. I don't know what the heck I was saying. I was so nervous. But as I was talking, as Richard Nixon, I realized he didn't know who I was doing. And then right in the middle of my speech, he turned to his wife Pat and said, "Why is this young man speaking in this strange voice?" And she said, "He's doing you." And he went, "He is? Oh, okay. Carry on. Carry on." And then when I finished, he said, "That was great, but I didn't hear it. I don't know who the hell you're doing." So Glenn Ford said to me, "Rich, I hope your car is parked out front facing Canada so you can get back."
Now, maybe it's because Richard Nixon never watched himself on TV, right? I read that.
Really?
Where he said we did not like to watch himself on television or tapes of himself. Which is kind of strange with the tape thing. But he never watched himself, right? He never watched himself on TV.
I did not know.
Yeah, so I bet that's why.
As Johnny Carson would say, I did not know that.
And so now, who else I like that you do is a former president that talks like this. What?
That's not bad.
What?
No.
These are dueling Bill Clinton impressions right
That's
now.
right. Boy, I'm still really pissed off that Hillary didn't become president. Would have been great, wouldn't it, to see a woman back in the Oval Office? Hope they shampooed that rug, I'll tell you.
What did George, I remember George Sr., they're friends now, but didn't George Sr. say something when Bill Clinton, when they had a rivalry going, and he had said,
Bill Clinton and who?
and George Sr.
I think they
years
became
ago.
great friends.
No, now they are, but before.
Oh,
he was,
maybe
yeah,
before,
he was-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, George Sr., was always punctuating words, talk like this. Okay, gotcha. Good to be here. My age, good to be anywhere.
And a lot of the political people that you did that were great over the years. Hubert Humphrey, remember Hubert Humphrey?
Hubert Humphrey had that little voice, so he talked like this.
Yes.
I'm as pleased as punch to be here tonight.
I love Hubert Humphrey. Hubert Humphrey used to come and see me at the Sands Hotel.
Is that right?
And I remember the first time he came to see me, I was thrilled because I was a big fan of his. And he came back after the show and he said,
Rich, I think you knew I was out there and you changed your act. You went easy on me.
I said, no, I didn't. No, I didn't at all. I just did my act.
No, you softened it.
I said, no, I didn't. I didn't, honest. So then guess what? About a week later, the maitre d' phones me and said, he's back again when he's wearing a disguise. Hubert Humphrey came back to see me with a mustache,
Is that right?
a floppy hat, and a raincoat on.
Oh, how funny.
And the maitre d' said, he's not fooling anybody, he's back here. And so I, of course, changed the jokes.
Yeah.
And he still wasn't convinced. Came back a third time with another disguise on.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, how funny is that? Now, back then when you would do your show, you never showed partisanship, right? You were partisan in your comedy, right? Because Hubert Humphrey was Democrat, right?
Yeah.
So right, I think it was a Democrat, right? Hubert Humphrey, right? Was he Democrat? Yeah, I think
No,
he was. Yeah.
he was a Republican, wasn't he?
Was he? No, Democrat.
Wasn't he under Lyndon Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah, Democrat. Yeah, Democrat. So when
Democrat.
you always evened it out. I remember.
Well, I tried to. I was more interested in the impression than their politics. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in the person than what they really stand for,
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was a ticket taker at a live theater in Northern California called the Circle Star Theater.
That's right.
When I was a kid, and Rich Little was playing there, and I was like you. I got to watch all the shows of all the live acts, and Barbara Eden, I Dream of Jeannie, was opening for you.
That's right.
And so then there was a story that went with that because you stayed in, I forgot what hotel you were staying in, but there was a fire alarm.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. You remember that?
I know everything.
That's right. There was a fire at 3 a.m.
And what happened?
And Barbara Eden stayed in her room. She didn't have her makeup on. And I said, "You are going to be burned up because you haven't got your makeup on?" So she said, "I'll put it on quickly. Tell me where the fire is." I said, "It's still 2 floors up. Keep brushing." So anyway, she finally came out.
Yeah.
And she looked gorgeous in her pajamas. Actually, it was quite a treat. Beautiful girl.
Yeah.
But isn't that funny? I'm not coming out till I put my makeup on.
It's funny because I said to Marty Allen on an interview that I did with him a while back, I said, you did a lot of the TV shows, and I said you were friends with, he was friends with Sidney Sheldon, who was the producer of I Dream of Jeannie. With Barbara Eden, and I said, and you did an episode of I Dream of Jeannie. Out of all the shows you did, I said you did an episode of I Dream of Jeannie. That was one of my favorite shows. And Marty Allen said, I don't remember that one. And I said, you don't remember Barbara Eden standing in front of you in a genie costume? How could you forget that? And he goes, I don't remember that one. I don't remember that one.
His memory is gone.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so now I'm going to take one more break, and then I want to come back with the remaining minutes because I want to talk about Hawaii Five-0 and a brilliant acting performance that you did. More with Rich Little, master impressionist, performing in his own show, which is a great nostalgia show, right? Over at the Laugh Factory at the Tropicana, and that's nightly at 7 p.m., dark on
Mondays and Fridays.
We'll be right back with more Rich Little. Right there.
It's funny you remember.
You don't know this yet, but in 1,500 miles, you'll see what you're really made of. After 5 hours of spinning and one unfortunate ride on the Gravitron, your grandkids spot a 6-foot banana that you need to win. In that moment, you'll be happy you partnered with the Humana Care Manager and got your health back on track, because that banana isn't coming home with you until that bell sings. Great things are ahead of you when your health is ready for them. At Humana, we can help you with a personalized plan for your health for years to come.
Some relationships you stick with. Over time, they get even better. That's why more people stick with Humana Medicare Advantage. We work together with you to find the best plan, however your needs might change. Because great things are ahead of you when your health is ready for them. Humana Medicare Advantage, the plan people stick with.
Welcome back to On the Town with the Vegas Voice. Here again, your host, Rich Natoli.
Hello. Well, we got a remaining few minutes with Rich Little, and everybody knows Mr. Little as a master impressionist, but what they don't know, and if you Google this or you go onto YouTube, you can watch this episode that he did years ago on Hawaii Five-0 as an actor. And he played a crazed killer who was obsessed with James Cagney in this episode. Did any of you see that? It was a brilliant performance, and
Thank you.
You were so good in that. And I don't think you got the accolades as an actor that you deserved, because it was a great performance.
Well, I did a couple of dramatic things. I did a policewoman once with Angie Dickinson.
That's a little more information than we want to know.
I played on Policewoman, if you look it up, I'm sure you can find it, a murder psychopathic rapist
Is that right? On Policewoman?
on Policewoman.
So
Yep.
it wasn't too much of a stretch then, pushing the murder on Hawaii Five-0.
I remember doing the show, it aired, and my mother phoned me up and she said, "I didn't watch it." I said, "Why not, Mom?" "My son is not a murder rapist." I said, "It's just a part, Mom. I'm just playing a part. I don't care." And I didn't like the shoes. My mother would always do that. When I would go on the Sullivan Show, I would phone her up. "Well, what did you think?" "I didn't like the tie. It ruined your performance. And that tacky suit has got to go."
And those Nehru jackets are outdated. And the bell bottoms don't like them.
And so now, you did, was that before or after, that was after you did the Hawaii Five-0, right? The Murder, She Wrote?
Yeah.
That was after. So now when you did Hawaii Five-0, did they test other actors for that, or did they just come to you and
I
offer
always
you?
thought they would have picked Frank Gorshin to do that because he did a great Cagney, better than I did.
Yeah.
But maybe they couldn't get him. But I was
No, you
delighted.
were more known
Well,
than Frank
well,
Gorshin.
I don't know about that, but I mean, Frank was known for Cagney and Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster, you know, and I was known for other voices. All impersonators are known for certain voices, you know.
Yeah.
And usually you didn't do their voices, you know.
Yeah.
If somebody did a great impression, I'd stay away from it, you know.
Yeah, well, you did a show called The Copycats back in the
Right.
late 60s, right?
And we worked with all impersonators.
Yeah, they were all, who was on there? There was
There was Frank Gorshin and George Kirby and Marilyn Michaels and
Fred Travellina
Fred
was on there.
Travellina. Oh, he was
yeah.
wonderful. And we had guest stars every week. Mm-hmm. We had Tony Curtis on.
Tony Curtis.
Yeah.
I love you, Spartacus. Rich, I don't talk like that at all. I never said I love you, Spartacus.
I said, you didn't?
No,
Well, what did you say?
I said to Kurt, you're a good guy.
Before we go with Rich Little, I want to ask, anybody have a question for Rich? Anybody have a, yes, sir. What's your name?
My name is Mitch.
Hi, Mitch.
First of all, it's nice to be here with you. Appreciate you doing this. So my question is actually a two-part question. Professional-wise, what was your highest moment, that sticks in your mind? And then secondly, professional-wise, what was the lowest moment you had?
Ooh, those are good questions. Highest moment, I have a couple of them. One was performing at Reagan's first inauguration. That was a very high for me. Got a lot of exposure and got a great reaction from Reagan. And that couldn't have been better. I was nervous about it, boy.
That was the one with Don.
Don was on, and Frank Sinatra organized that, and it was a great show. It was a wonderful gala, you know. A little unlike the one they just did for Trump, where nobody showed. But those galas back then were big deals, you know, and they were broadcast nationally. And I did both Reagan inauguration galas, so that was a high point for me doing that. Another high point in my career was doing a benefit for a hospital in Ottawa, my hometown, and raising money for the Rich Little Neonatal Center, which is still going strong today. And Frank and I, mostly Frank, raised $1 million for that neonatal center, and that was a high point for me because everybody important in Canada went to see that show, and Frank performed, and it was a great evening for me.
Yeah.
Low points in my career, gosh.
Playing a murder rapist.
Playing, no. That was fun.
That's what Bill Cosby said.
Oh, God, I'm glad that tape held. But anyway.
Let's do one more question.
Low points, probably, I'm not overly, thrilled that I had 4 marriages that went nowhere. You know, most of my marriages, they threw minute rice.
Wait, one more question. We have one
4
more.
times. I think I was doing Johnny Carson too much. He was married 4 times too.
4 times.
Do you do Trump?
I do Trump.
We are going to build a wall, a great wall, a wall. And Walmart is going to pay for the wall, or Walgreens or Mark Wahlberg are going to pay for a great wall, a wall. We're going to pay for a wall.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Mr. Little. Appreciate it. Rich Little, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Real pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Again, the book is Little by Little. They can get this on Amazon, right, Rich?
That's right, Amazon.com.
Amazon.com for that. for the book there, and go check out his show at the Tropicana Laugh Factory Room nightly at 7 p.m. All right, see you back here again next time. Goodbye.